All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yep.
Awesome. So, congratulations on making it to the last week of classes. So, we're almost through it. I wanted to start by answering Eduardo's question from last Thursday about whether I can share the exams from earlier in the semester as study guides. And after spending quite a few hours on it over the weekend, turns out the answer is no. For whatever reason, Canvas doesn't let you like export a quiz. It doesn't let you print it. It doesn't let you do anything to it. And when I go in to edit it, it shows it basically each question as an image. So I have to go in and edit the question in order to be able to highlight the text, and then edit the answers to highlight each one. It would be like hours and hours of work. So unfortunately, I can't share those. However, what I will share are the earlier practice sort of quiz games that we did on quizzes. So I'll share those. And then we'll have another one on Thursday that we'll be doing for the final exam, and I'll share that as well. So that is the best I can do for that, unfortunately.
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
So previously in other classes, I've had teachers just been able to release the answers so that we're able to look at the quiz or like the exams ourselves. So we can just go in and like see what the question is and what the answer was, and then study from that straight from Canvas.
Are you on Canvas right now?
No, I'm not.
It,
I can check it out though.
yeah, if you could check it out, because I can go in. That was an option, but I thought it would only show you the answers while, immediately after you took the exam. But if I can release those answers and then you guys can see them on your own, then that's fine by me.
I'm on Canvas right now if you want me to look, if you want to try that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know that in previous classes, teachers had just like unlocked the exam, and that's how we are able to see the content in it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me give this a try here. Let's see. Edit. What's the questions? Let's try exam one. Settings. Okay. Show points, show possible points, show items and questions, show your response, indicate response is correct or incorrect. Okay, let's try this. Let me save this. Okay, if you go into exam one,
It says no content for me still.
Yeah, it still says closed.
So I need to reopen it as if you guys are taking it again?
I'm not sure about that part.
Let me try that just for fun.
So actually on exam one, if I go in and I look at my submission,
Mhm.
then it shows all of that. It's just like on a separate page. So if you click through a couple of things, you can find like the submission details,
Oh yeah, I see where you're at.
and then it actually
there we
shows
go.
you all of the different questions and responses.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it works.
Okay, does that work for exam 2 also?
Let's see.
Hmm, I'm not seeing it on exam two.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
for
thing
me it
is,
says correct
It's
answers are hidden.
formatted differently.
let me see. Yeah, because like between exam 1 and exam 2, I switched over from the classic quiz app in Canvas to the new quiz app in Canvas.
Hmm.
And so, and they've got different settings. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's save that. Okay, try exam 2 again. See if you can see the answers now.
Yep, they work.
Yeah,
Good.
we got it now.
Awesome. Okay, so there you go.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks. I
Thank you.
should have talked to you guys earlier. It would save me a few hours over the weekend.
Yeah, sorry you spent so much time doing all that useless work.
It
yeah.
actually it drove me crazy because I should be able to just like copy and paste stuff into Word if I wanted to make a hard copy of the exam, and there's no options for that, and it's kind of frustrating. So, all
Yeah,
right.
Canvas is good for some things, but the platform can be a little bit finicky at times.
Yeah, that's true.
It can definitely be finicky. All right, good. So I'm glad we got that cleared up. So first thing I wanted to ask is whether anybody has any questions about the final project that you're working on.
Just one question. How hard of a deadline is it?
How hard of a deadline is it?
Yeah.
I would say it's medium to firm density. It's it's basically there for your benefit in the sense that I don't want the work on that bleeding over into the final exam week when you're also trying to study. So, but if you have some kind of extenuating circumstances and you really need an extension on it, then that probably won't be a problem.
Yeah, because for some reason I ended up having my final exam for my philosophy class switched over from finals week to this week instead.
Got it. Yeah, so if you'd like to push that off and submit it like on Monday or something, then that would be fine.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna try to submit it in by Saturday the latest.
Okay, yeah, that's even better. So
Hey
try-
Scott, I'm wondering if I can take the final exam early actually. I'm hoping this Friday because I'm gonna be on a road trip on Thursday, the time that our final is.
Got it. This Friday, I'm trying to think. Probably not. I have it. It's like mostly done, but I'm still working on it, and I can't guarantee it'll be done by Friday.
Next Monday or
That
just
would be,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. I could definitely get it open before next Thursday, but I can let you know what day that'll be.
Yeah, that would be sweet.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a conflict during our final exam time next week? Okay. All right, good.
I have one question.
Sure.
Do you have like a preferred citation method? Like, should we be doing APA? Because that's just kind of how I've been citing it.
APA is what I always use, but I'm not too picky. As long as the information's there, I don't, and you're consistent, I don't really care.
Great, cool.
Yeah. Okay, great. So today I wanted to show you guys a couple of tools that you can use for downloading aerial imagery that can be useful for the reports that you're working on, or really any kind of work that you're doing in landscape architecture or urban design, or as we're doing this semester, landscape ecology. And they're particularly useful though for landscape ecology and thinking about habitat because of some of the features that they have. So I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to be looking at two different apps today. So the first one, hopefully everyone can see this, an aerial photo on my screen. So
Yep.
this is from Esri, and this is their, what they call their Landsat app. And it's basically pre-processed multispectral imagery that you can use to assess conditions depending on how that multispectral imagery is broken down. So this is, and it only shows basically a certain set of information. It doesn't go back as far as the next app we'll be looking at, but it's a little bit easier to use. So I feel like the first app I'm showing you guys is like great for just exploring and finding basic information, getting aerial imagery. If you want to really dig down and get a lot more detailed about it and be able to download aerial imagery that you can use in GIS, then the second app is better for that. But the second app is a little bit more complicated and it's definitely a lot slower because it has a lot more information in it. So we're going to start with Landsat, and the address for this is right up here. So if you'd like to open this up on your own web browser to follow along, that would be dandy. So it's livingatlas2.arcgis.com/Landsat viewer. And by default, it actually opens up in the agriculture view. I have it on the second one down. So all of these icons on the left side here represent different combinations of the multispectral imagery that highlight different aspects of the landscape. So some of them are highlighting water content, some are highlighting plant health, some are highlighting geological features. And right now I just have it on natural color, which is the eyeball, so that's the second button down. And I am looking at Veil right now. So one thing you'll notice about a lot of this imagery is that it's not super high resolution. This is not like the aerial imagery that you get out of Google Earth. So the Google Earth imagery is strictly based on, it's strictly based on visual bands of light, and it doesn't include multispectral imagery, and it's a much higher resolution than what you're getting here. So what we're going to do, sorry, I don't know why that changed. All right, so when you first open the app, it basically has you centered on Redlands, California, which is where Esri is headquartered, so that's why they chose Redlands. But you can choose to go anywhere. So in this case, here, I'm gonna go to Boulder. And there were a lot of clouds that day, but we'll take a look in a minute at how you can avoid some of that. So as I mentioned, all of these are different bands of information. Boulder, not too useful because of all the cloud cover. I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. Let's go someplace that didn't have as many clouds that day. Here we go. So Broomfield's pretty clear. No, it's not. Why does it keep doing that? Okay, so this thing's wigging out. I'm gonna reload this. I don't know why it's changing so much. All right, there we go. So this is what you get when you first open the program. So it's centered on Redlands, and it's looking at the sort of agriculture, which is basically an attempt to combine certain wavelengths of light to indicate, they call it agriculture. Really what it is irrigated land. And so it's a combination of looking at plant health and moisture content in the soil. And the brighter green areas are the areas that have, that they're identifying as agriculture. Obviously, all this stuff up in the mountains up here is not agriculture. It's just showing up as green because it's got happy plants and good moisture content. So if I hit the eyeball below that, you can see that we get natural color. I'll give that a second to load. And that's just like aerial imagery that you get from looking at Google Earth. Now, because this imagery is captured from satellites or circling the Earth, sometimes you get cloud cover. And there's a way that you can kind of choose imagery that doesn't have cloud cover. I'll show you that in a minute after we get through all these tools on the left here. The next one down after natural color is color infrared. And in this case, it's just looking at healthy vegetation, which shows up as bright red. So again, you can see sort of up in the mountains here. And if I go, let's go out to Colorado. One of the nice things, by the way, about the multispectral imagery is that it's not as impacted by cloud cover as the visual imagery is, because it's picking up other wavelengths that actually pass through the cloud cover. So let's try Boulder again here. Here we go. So again, here you can see sort of in some of the brighter red, the areas are identified as having essentially healthy plant cover. And then underneath that, we have another one that basically highlights rock formations. The rock formations and the geology, I'm not quite sure what the difference between those two is. They almost always look exactly the same to me. But they basically highlight areas where there's bare rock exposed or where there's stone close to the surface. So it helps you to identify geologic features like mountains or rock outcrops or things of that nature. And here's the geology one. It looks almost exactly the same. So I'm not sure that one of those offers any more useful information than the other. There's bathymetric. So bathymetric is not that helpful in Colorado because what it's doing is trying to look for land formations underneath water. And that one's not that useful here, but if we go somewhere like, let's say, Florida Keys, here we go, and then we go, so this one is the geologic features. If we go to bathymetric, let's compare that to visible light. Yeah, and you can see some of these land features have little bits of land sticking up above the water. If we go to the bathymetric, it should show us a little bit more. Kinda, you can see a little bit more of the detail of the land formations here underneath the water, whether or not they're sticking above or not. So that's what the bathymetric does. Panchromatic is just a black and white image that's got better resolution than the color imagery that's available for the visible spectrum. And again, that's going to be affected by cloud cover. And then there's a vegetation index where you have healthy vegetation in dark green and areas with less healthy vegetation or no vegetation in tans and reds, right? And so here on the island, you can see, areas where there's a lot of vegetation. And then, of course, out here on these islands, the vegetation is very happy because it's a subtropical climate. There's also moisture index, right? Of course, Key West is going to show lots of moisture because it's just surrounded by water. Let's go back to Boulder for this one. All right, so this is showing areas in terms of their relative moisture. So in the dark blue, you can see places, often this is bodies of water, but not always. You have to be careful about looking at this because sometimes the moisture index picks up clouds as being bodies of water. So you sort of need to compare that with the visual imagery. We can see this one up here is an actual body of water. We go down here, so that's Boulder Reservoir up there. Right, and we can tell that some of those are actual bodies of water just by looking at the map underneath. But you can see here areas that where the water content is higher, obviously all throughout the city limits of Boulder, because most of that land is irrigated. And then when you get out into areas of plains and so forth, there's a lot less moisture. But then up in the foothills, there's more moisture again. And then if you wanted to, you can also do your own versions where you can combine different wavelengths of light to get specified types of information out of it. You need to know a little bit more about how that light combines to reveal different types of land features to use that. But these other ones can be really helpful in terms of showing plant health. Now, the thing that makes this really useful is that you can also go back in time and you can look at what that same place looked like at different points in time. So for example, if I go, let's not go to that one, let's go to the moisture index, right? So this is showing moisture. So if I click on the timeline here, so this is that clock icon down underneath. If we look at that, you can see that there's basically a time scale here, goes back in this case all the way to 1973. And we can actually change how much cloud cover we're willing to live with as we're scrubbing through all of this imagery. So if you 10% cloud cover, if that's fine, then you can leave it on that. If you only want to see the images that have no cloud cover, you can go to 0, but there are very few of those. So usually I leave it at like 2 or 5%. I'm going to do 5% right now. And we can move this slider back to different points in time to see, this must have been really rainy, in June of 2018, it must have been a lot of rain, because you can see how much more moisture content there is in the soil than there is currently, right? So again, this is right now, the soil's a lot drier than it was at that particular point in time, right? So you can go back in time, in this case, all the way back to 1973. So 2015, midsummer. Going back to June 2013, it looks like basically midsummer, like in June is a pretty wet month for Boulder, at least, because the soil generally seems pretty wet during that time of year. If we go all the way back here, August 14th, 1973, that can't be right. Let's try the next one up, 75. Yeah, so some of these I suspect are either it was really poor resolution or it didn't collect the information. You'll actually see errors in the satellite imagery that's collected sometimes. So if we go back, let's go to the natural color. Right, and again, as long as you have this timeline open, you can adjust the amount of cloud cover. So if you go to look at Boulder and there's too much cloud cover, you can just change that cloud filter and then it'll filter out all of the imagery that has a lot of cloud cover in it. Right, so in this case, the visual imagery goes back to 2001. Again, I'll bring it up to today, or relatively close to today, that's end of March. Right, let's go look at, let's go to Fort Collins after they've done regenerating. There we go. We have to close that. There we go. For some reason, you have to close the timeline to use the search window. Let's go to Fort Collins. I'll show you something interesting here. So again, this is the natural imagery. If we open up the timeline and we don't want to see images with that much cloud cover, we just adjust it here. So there we go. So now it's showing us the most recent image that has 5% or less of cloud cover, right? So let's look at the moisture index here, and you'll see Horsetooth Reservoir. I'm going to zoom in on that a bit. Right, and back in I think it was 78, late summer. Let's see if I can get to the right place here. It's 2015, 13. I'm sure they have the year I want. It's 1989. But you can basically go through this and you can see, like, this was a really dry year here. September 23rd, 2001, you can see how low the water levels were in Horsetooth Reservoir. And if I go back to the visible imagery here, you can see how much dry land is exposed, and there were just basically a couple little puddles left over in Horsetooth Reservoir. So that was obviously a very dry time, and that soil moisture backs it up. And of course, all of these different indices are related to each other. If we look at the vegetation index, I'm sure we're not going to see that much healthy vegetation. Yeah, you can see lots more browns and reds here. Greens are really, this is City Park right here. So you're really only seeing greens in the irrigated areas, and most of the other areas are pretty dry. So this is a good way of assessing how some of these different factors have changed over time. If you're trying to assess, for example, like the plant quality in a habitat over time, you can go back and look at it at different points in time and sort of assess how that's been tracking through time. So that's the first app. And the second app is basically shows you a lot of the same information, but gets a lot more detailed and lets you download that information so that you can use it in ArcGIS as well. So I'm going to close this and I'll open up LandLook. So this is the LandLook viewer, and this is also multispectral imagery. It goes back again to the earliest that they have in this one is 1977. And I'm going to show you how you can kind of fine tune the information that you're getting from this. So it's again showing a lot of similar information to what we saw in the first one. The first one's easier to navigate, so it's good for sort of getting general information. This one lets you really sort of drill down and get a lot more detailed. So first we'll start in this one with, well, since we're already at Horsetooth Reservoir in Fort Collins, we'll just start there. And there are various tools up here. You can, if you do search, then you can choose to go to a specific location. Over here, you can just type in where you want to go to, or you can choose like a specific point based on latitude and longitude, or zoom to a bounding box and so forth. So you can get and these bounding box coordinates are the same as what you find in the bounding box coordinates when you're zoomed in on a certain screen in GIS. So the nice thing about that is that you can set these to be exactly to what you have in GIS so that you're getting the extent that matches up with what you're working on in GIS. All right, so once you've found the location that you want to look at, the next thing you need to do is to basically you can choose a base map image here. So this base map gallery is the same as the base maps that you have available in GIS. If we go to this first one, yeah, so home is just the home extent. The second button is to locate where you're located currently. So in this case, Fort Collins. You can turn labels on and off. That's the third button. And then the fourth one is really where it gets into the interesting stuff. So this lets you download satellite imagery from specific years and specific satellites. So here they have different satellite programs listed, and you can check off the boxes for which ones you want to download from. So to give you an example, to understand what these are, you can actually click on the link here for that satellite program. So Landsat 1 through 5 MSS. We click on that. It has a description down here. The second line is really the most useful description here. So it's a multispectral scanner. That's what MSS stands for. Level 1, collected at 80 meter resolution. So that means every pixel is 80 meters on a side. Multispectral data from Landsats 1 through 5. Data was processed to 60 meter pixel size. Okay, so the actual pixels are 60 meters. Collected at 80, they processed it to get it down to 60, and it covers the years 1972 to 1992. So, so that gives you a sense of what kind of information you're getting out of that data set. Right, if we click on the next one above that, which is Landsat 4 and 5, it tells us this one is a thematic mapper, level 1, 30 meter multispectral data. So the other one was processed to 60 meter. This one is 30 meter, right? So how many 30 meter pixels fit inside one 60 meter pixel?
Gonna guess like 2.
2. Yeah, I was gonna say 2.
2 sounds like a good guess, but it's actually not, because
4.
the resolution is how many meters it is on a side, right? So a 60 meter pixel is 60 meters high by 60 meters across. A 30 meter pixel is 30 meters high by 30 meters across. So you can fit 2 going up and 2 going across. So that means that 30 meter resolution is 4 times more detailed than 60 meter. Does that make sense? So it's kind of logarithmic in that when you when the resolution is the resolution is actually going up by a factor of 4, even though it's just the number is just doubled. So this has 4 times the resolution of that 60 meter. And it's a thematic mapper. That basically just means that it's a higher level. Thematic mapper is what they use to collect the information that's in the National Land Cover Database. So it covers a wider spectrum of information. It's not quite hyperspectral, but it's got a lot more information in it. Now we can close that. If we go to the next most recent one, 1999 to present, Landsat 7 is ETM Plus. Taking a minute to load. Here we go. So this one is more recent, obviously 1999 to present. Enhanced thematic mapper. So again, we're adding more to the spectrum. This one is 15 to 30 meter multispectral data, right? So it's getting more, the resolution is getting better here. So depending on the year, the earlier years have, or the earlier time frame has 30 meter pixels. And then as you get later, it moves up to 15 meter pixels. And then we have Landsat 8. Right, this one is Operational Land Imager. They're basically just acronyms that they use to indicate what kinds of information they're collecting. Thermal infrared sensors. So in this case, they've added infrared sensors in addition. And this is also 15 to 30 meter multispectral data from Landsat 8. And then finally, the most recent one available is Sentinel-2. And you'll notice that this one, they've improved the resolution. Now it's 10 meter resolution for Sentinel-2. This one's from the European Space Agency, from the EROS archive, which sounds like a sex site, but it's not. It's actually an acronym. I forget exactly what it stands for. Oh, there it is. Earth Resources Observation and Science, or their EROS program. And so that has 10 meter resolution. It's got multispectral instrumentation that is more advanced and captures a larger spectrum of wavelengths. And this one only goes 2015 to present. So based on all of that information, then they have more information about how many bands they have, what the resolution is at each band, and so forth. So depending on the kind of information that you're trying to collect, you can get very detailed about what types of information you want to collect. So in this case, I'm going to let's turn off everything except for the Landsat 1 through 5, which is 1972 through 2013. And once you have this set, again, it's got an option to adjust for cloud cover. So I'll leave that 10% or less. Days of the year. So if you only want to do it for, like, let's say the summertime, then you can set these to be from, let's say June 21st through September 21st. And in fact, I'm going to do that. So let's do June 21st, which is the first day of summer, to September 21st, which is the first day of fall. Right, so you can adjust what time of year you're looking at, and then of course you can adjust what years you're looking at as well. I want the full spectrum, 1972 to 2013, summertime, Landsat 1 through 5. So now I'm going to click on Show Images, and this is going to take a little while because it's downloading, lots and lots of images here. So about 40 years worth of imagery. Here we go. So first thing you'll notice, by the way, is that you see how fuzzy this is. The pixels are very soft. That's because we're looking at that 60 meter pixel resolution. So it's not very high quality. But if you do need to go back in time and kind of trace historical information, that's the best we have, and at least we have something from that time period, right? And you can see here now that once you download that imagery, it opens up a new window. It shows you which imagery is available. It has a window up here where you can hit play, where it basically goes through each of those images in that during the months that you specified and the years that you specified to show how that place has changed over time. So I can hit play on here and it'll go a little bit slowly, and I'm going to actually stop it at certain points to highlight certain things. And sometimes it's entirely missing data. Oh, stop. It's going too fast. But basically you can see, stop now. But as it's going through time, you can kind of see conditions changing here. The next one, I'm going to stop it. Okay, there we go. So let's go back a little bit. So you see on some of these, you have like these bright lines going through here. And then there are some years, I don't know if I'll find one. Yeah, some years where you get lots of lines going through. What do you think that is?
Are those like scanner lines from scanning the photographs?
They're basically, yeah, they're basically like scanner lines, and they're essentially errors in the image processors in the satellites. So sometimes there's an error in the actual collection of the imagery and you're missing entire portions of imagery, or there are lines going through it. Sometimes the transmission of that data from the satellite back down to Earth, for whatever reason, they didn't, they couldn't get a good connection. And so it's like missing lines every certain distance. So when you see stuff showing up like that, it's just errors in the technology. Those errors tend to get less and less as you get into later years, but you do see that showing up from time to time. So if we go here, let's go to, what's that, 86. If we go to the late 70s here, and you can go step by step if you want by hitting the arrows backwards and forwards. So if I go back here, there was a drought in, I want to say, late 1978. It's going awfully slow. Thank you, Zoom. Come on, computer. Everyone's still there, right? I haven't lost internet.
Yep, we're still here.
Okay, I'm just going to reload. Yeah, and it just starts over. So anyway, I won't, well, I'll try it here. Let's see if it lets me get back to it. Let's go. Anyway, Denver, there we go, Fort Collins. There's Horsetooth. All right, so I'm gonna do this again. We'll just do Landsat 1 through 5. I'll start this later. Let's start in 1975 and we'll do 1995. So only 20 years. The summertime. Uh, 10% or less of cloud cover, show images. There we go. So now let's move my active date to 77. You can see that was also a dry year. Kind of gets stuck sometimes, doesn't it? So when I was doing this earlier, it was not freezing up like this. So I'm hoping this is just a Zoom thing. But it gives you an idea though, how you can scrub through. There's also this red, oh, finally, just took it a while. So I think it's one more. You can see sometimes data is just missing entirely in the image. So it's like late 1978, so like August, September, got really dry that year. Here's September, yeah. So you can see Horsetooth Reservoir basically shrinking here. 79. So this is September 12th, 1978. Yeah, and that jumps to 1979 because I'm only doing summers. But it lets you sort of track what the water levels were over time. And because it's multispectral imagery, you also can look at things like plant health and other aspects like that. This red button here will let you actually download that imagery as a video. It takes a little while if you have lots of dates and lots of years. It'll take it a while to process. But that'll let you download an AVI file so you don't have to wait for it to refresh on each one. You can just play it like a video and you can sort of watch that particular location changing through time for the dates that you selected. And then down here, there are other options for whether you want to dynamically refresh the images. So that just means that as you move around the map, it automatically refreshes it. You can highlight. They have image enhancements if you want to get a little bit sharper image. This is, it's not actually higher resolution. It's just changing the contrast in the image. So for example, if we go to %clip, you'll see that it's just kind of making the images a little bit sharper. So even though it's not better resolution, it makes it a little bit easier to see certain features in the landscape. So they have different options for doing that. And then there's also just image transparency down here at the bottom, so you can see it overlaid with the base map. So you can go through and you can find all kinds of data that you want for a specific place. And then the nice thing is that the next button over here is the download or export So you can export that imagery so that you can use it in GIS. So here you can choose what format you want. Typically I do GeoTIFFs if I'm using them in GIS. You can choose the spatial reference. They only have 2 options here, geographic or Web Mercator. Web Mercator is kind of the standard, so that's usually what I go with. And then you can export it. And one thing I will point out is that if you do want to use this and download the data, they require you, I think they still require you, let's see, I go to export here. It used to at least require that you actually have an Eros account, which is free, and it's an easy sign up. Oh, there we go. Gave it to me without even asking for an account. That's great. So maybe you don't need one anymore. So I'm going to go into my GIS, Colorado. Let's make a new folder in here called raster. Yeah, I know. Let's go back into Colorado. There we go, raster. I'll save this in there. Let's see if we can get that open in GIS. Right, so over here, let's zoom into Fort Collins. I'm going to add a folder connection. So let's add a folder connection to my GIS folder. Okay, that's not very helpful. Oh, there we go. Let's take a minute. Go to C, GIS data. All right, so now I can go into here, I'm going to Colorado, raster. Here's our GeoTIFF. And have we gone over building pyramids before?
Yep.
Okay, I thought we did. I usually choose yes, just because it makes it operate faster. So here you can see that imagery that I had on the screen there. It's geo-referenced, right? If I turn it off and on, it aligns with all the features in GIS here. So now you could use this if you want to do basically some image analysis or combine it with other GIS information. You can change the way that it's represented in here in terms of the colors that are used. And so it gives you a lot of options and flexibility so that you can actually use that data. The first application I showed you just lets you view the data. This one actually lets you download it, manipulate it, and do analyses with it. And oh, my video is done. Let's take a look at that. I'm gonna download the video. Just put that on my desktop. That is going to take about 40 seconds to download. And we can also go to this option. So that's the export images that we looked at. Base maps, print. They also have like measuring tools on here if you need to measure distances. This is basically just a locus map that shows the area that we're looking at in Fort Collins. You can get information about specific pixels and areas on the map. Or actually, sorry, that's on the other app, lets you do that. This one is just giving you information about the app itself. Right, you can do map overlays that show the individual images that were tiled together to create the mosaic. You can bookmark different locations and so forth. So this is a pretty useful tool for getting imagery into GIS that you want to work with, and for looking at through time and getting really highly detailed. So if we go back, let's go back to the options here where we choose our imagery. If I uncheck this instead, let's look at Sentinel-2. And again, it's just going to do summer for the years that are available, which is 2015 to 2021. These are much higher resolution. And while that's doing that, let's take a look at the animation we downloaded here. See all kinds of nice error imagery as you go through this thing. Actually want this thing to go faster, and I can change the speed on it. Video. Speed, there we go. Let's do faster. Here we go. So here it's just playing the video a little bit faster, right? So you can see again those, for one particular place, you can see those changes in time for all of that imagery that you chose to download. So that can be, and obviously, you have errors popping up in the data and so forth. So when you go back to the 70s, it's not that great. If you're just doing more recent imagery, it tends to be a lot cleaner, and it's really useful for seeing changes actually happening over time right in front of your eyes. Stop that. Let's see if our Sentinel-2 downloaded yet. Here we go. So you can see how much higher the resolution is here for the Sentinel-2 imagery, right? And again, similarly, you can download videos, you can choose which imagery you want to download and bring it into GIS. So those are the two tools I wanted to show you guys. They might be helpful. Again, look, here's some more examples. Like this was just, along this line here where it's got kind of strangely colored pixels. That's just errors in the technology. So those do pop up sometimes. Fortunately, they're not consistent. You don't get them all the time. And if you're really picky about it, obviously, then you can just choose to ignore the images that have those data problems with them. But this can be really useful for looking at something and bringing it into GIS and creating maps and creating visualizations that might be helpful for the reports that you're working on. So any questions about either of those two apps, the Landsat viewer from Esri or the USGS Landlook viewer? I'll take that as a no. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, I'll stop sharing my screen here. If there aren't any other questions or anyone, I'm happy to look at anybody's work if they have questions about it, but otherwise, that is it for today. And then on Thursday, we're going to be spending the whole class doing a review session for the final exam. So, and that'll be on quizzes, and we'll be going through and reviewing some of the stuff that we covered this semester. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Good.
All right.
Yep.
Great. Then have a good one, and I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.
Hey, Scott, will you let me know if and when you can get that final exam up early, maybe Monday or Tuesday of next week?
Yeah, I wrote down a note to contact you as soon as it's available.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I'm guessing probably like Monday or Tuesday, because I'll probably be finishing up over the weekend.
Yeah, that'll be perfect.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Yep. Take care.
You too.